gentlemen, sorry for the delay. Welcome to the regular council meeting for May 16th, 2016. I want to first say that we recognize that we're on the traditional territory of the Shnuneymuxw First Nations. I'd like to call the regular meeting of council to order and with a list of late items, introduction of late items. Please, Ms. Geary.
There are quite a few late items on the addendum tonight. Under 5B, we're going to add a presentation by the Chief Administrative Officer, Tracy Samra. Under 8G, we're going to add a delegation by Mr. Tim McGrath to speak to the disposition of city-owned land at 1406 Bowen Road to the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre Society. Under 8I, we're going to add delegation Mr. Tim McGrath to speak to Regional Growth Strategy Amendment Bylaw, number 1615.01, 2016. Under 8K, to the report on the appointment of Deputy Corporate Officers, we're going to add the following points to the staff recommendation. That Council number 3, accept and confirm the resignation of Mr. Chris Jackson from the position of Manager of Legislative Services. And 4, accept and confirm the resignation of Guillermo Ferrero from the position of Director of Information Technology, Legislative Services and Communications. Under 11A, correspondence, we are adding an email dated April 22nd from Rupert and Franny Yakulashek regarding the City of Victoria's Federal Bill of Environmental Rights resolution. And not included in the addendum, we are replacing page 2 of the staff report, which 8G staff report, which is page 82 of your original agenda. The disposition of city-owned land at 1406 Bowen Road to the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre Society. And I believe the mayor, you have something, as well as I believe a member of council might be bringing forward an item regarding the painting of rainbow crosswalks. So, and yes, I'll let you talk about your item.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. I'm bringing back for reconsideration item number development permit 989 at 3795 Glen Oaks Drive. Councillor Hong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to bring up an item with Nanaimo regards to Nanaimo Pride Society's request for the sidewalk painting. A verbal update from staff, please.
Thank you.
And where would that go, sir?
I'm sorry?
Where would that be in the agenda?
Ms. Gray.
It can go under other business, which would be 14A, but ultimately council could put it anywhere they want it on the agenda because 14A is right at the end. So
14A works.
Okay. And just to confirm your item for reconsideration, Your Worship, will be under 8N.
8N, thank you. Thank you. So, any others, Council? Seeing none, call for a motion of the adoption of the agenda as amended. Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, motion for the adoption of the minutes of the open meeting of April the 18th. Councillor Pratt, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Discussion? Errors or omissions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Adoption of the minutes of the regular meeting of council for April 18th.
So moved.
Moved and seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Any errors and omissions? Seeing none. Discussion? Seeing none. Call the question. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. First item, presentations. Under item number 5, Mr. Terry Simpson, President of the Nanaimo Fiddle Society, regarding World Fiddle Day on May 21st, 2016. Go ahead, sir.
Mayor and Council, I'm thanking for Come up here and do this. It's Saturday is May 21st is World Fiddle Day. And what we're asking is that the Nanaimo Council put World Fiddle Week from the 21st. There's about 150 fiddlers in town, and we brought some of them here to.
Who knew?
They wouldn't let me
150.
play. It might sway the vote the other way.
That wouldn't be the first time you did that.
next week and all through town.
I was just going to say that if you're not in the parade this weekend, we're not going to declare.
We're in the parade.
And Councillor Bestwick has been mumbling ever since you started to himself, 150? 150. There's 150.
Oh, at least.
At least.
That's great.
Well, it's like I'm shocked at the number of harpists there are in Nanaimo as well.
Well, there's fiddlers and harpists.
Thank you very, very much. And we're happy to accommodate. The next item is presentation by Chief Administrative Officer Tracy Samra. Ms. Samra.
Is my mic on? Yes. Thank you. Mayor and Council, community, I'm taking the extraordinary step of making a statement regarding my employment with the City of Nanaimo. First, I'm honored to have been selected as the city's Chief Administrative Officer out of a broad field of candidates. I'm equally privileged to have the support of so many community members, community leaders, city staff, and members of council. Without their support, I would not have been able to successfully demonstrate my commitment to the leadership of the city in what has been a challenging work environment. It is well known that certain councillors opposed my employment with the city. Even before council made the decision to hire me as the interim city manager, Councillor Brennan alerted the media that a group of them had a newsworthy story. She unilaterally decided to report out on confidential information in an open meeting via the mayor's report and to a social media Facebook group administrator. I pause to note that the corporate record clearly shows there was no motion to release anything about the hiring process or me. Council asked Councillor Brennan to apologize for her actions in leaking confidential information. Instead, Councillor Brennan chose to issue legal demands to Mayor McKay to suspend me from my position and launch an investigation to overturn the interim hiring process. Council asked for and received a legal opinion on the interim hiring process. Both the new lawyers and a long-time city firm confirmed that the hiring process was lawful. Mayor McKay wrote to Councillor Brennan's lawyer confirming that the city hiring process was lawful and that he had no grounds to suspend me at that time. Subsequent to that, Mayor McKay approached a different law firm for advice and eventually made a complaint to Minister Fassbender about the interim hiring process and council. As a result, the Ministry of Community, Sport, Cultural Development contacted staff at the City of Nanaimo to investigate the allegations. After the investigation and a review of a letter from 7 council members, the ministry advised that it did not intend to intervene unless specifically asked by council motion. The ministry has held firm on its refusal to get involved unless mandated by council. Mayor McKay also went to the ombudsperson with similar complaints, but they haven't initiated an investigation to my knowledge. At the same time all of this was taking place, I continued to carry out my duties as the interim city manager, and council initiated the staffing competition for the permanent CAO. Mayor McKay at that time opposed the process, asked council to terminate it and investigate me, and on various occasions accused me of being untrustworthy generally, and more particularly suggested that I lied about an investigation commenced by him and the former city manager. I was forced on each occasion to refute the allegations and did so completely. When I was selected for the successful candidate in the search process, and after I was confirmed by motion by council in the position, it was my expectation that the turmoil and attacks would cease. They did not. Mayor McKay even went to WorkSafe BC to allege I failed to create a safe work environment for staff. WorkSafe BC conducted an investigation and decided to take no further action. Councillor Brennan has added to the hostile working environment by openly challenging my decision-making in front of staff and most recently to the media. When asked to withdraw her demand to terminate me, she has repeatedly refused. I appreciate that council has made attempts, both formally and informally, to have both the mayor and Councillor Brennan cease such conduct, which is damaging both to the city and to me, as well as impairing my ability to carry out my duties as a CAO. Unfortunately, these steps by council have not yielded any results. Or has a cease and desist letter from my lawyer directed to the mayor, or legal advice received from the city's corporate lawyers about respectful workplace obligations of the employer. It is apparent, in my opinion, that what they seek to create is an environment that would cause me to resign as your CAO and sue the city. I have no intentions of doing so. Despite all of this, we have moved the city forward, and I intend to continue as the CAO. We have made great progress on council agenda. There is much work to be done on the core services review, and I enjoy working with staff when I'm actually given the opportunity to do so, free of interference and harassment. I am hoping that this public statement addresses the questions that will be raised from the release of in-camera motions and puts some pressure on Councillor Brennan and Mayor McKay to treat me in a respectful and professional manner in the workplace and media, as all employees deserve to be treated. I personally extended an olive branch to the mayor on Tuesday with the assistance of the Human Resources Department, with a plea that he set aside any concerns he has about me so that the mayor and the CAO, two very important positions, can be seen to be working together by the public and by staff. I know I can do this. I'm asking the mayor to make a statement that he will make this commitment to. It's time to set aside the past and move forward together, and I look forward to the future of the city. Respectfully, Tracy Samra, Chief Administrative Officer.
Well, that's probably one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard. And I have to, excuse me, sir. We're trying to conduct business here. Sir. Sir. Sir, please sit down or you'll be asked to leave. Sir, please sit down or you'll be asked to leave. For the third and final time, sir, please sit down or you'll be asked to leave.
On a point of order, I'd like you to remove that ridiculous shirt. If signs are not allowed by people in the gallery, then certainly
Can the clerks please notify security?
Yeah, just sit down, Tim, for now. No. There's always question period, Tim.
Thank you, sir. Now, I think we just need to move on with our business. Thank you. The next item, Mayor's report. So we've had some discussions of late with respect to using the Mayor's report in a very positive way. I've got 9 items or 8 items here today that I wanted to discuss. And the first thing, of course, is on Thursday, last Thursday, I participated in a celebration of Black Frank's birthday. It was Frank Ney's birthday, and it's to be noted that it's the 50th anniversary of the Nanaimo Bathtub Festival and celebrations, and they're hoping to have a bigger and better event than we've seen in a tremendously long time. They're really, really excited about it. I met as one of my portfolios, if you will, in my role as an RDN director with the Transit Select Committee. Councillor Hong and Councillor Bestwick are also on that committee. And one of the topics of discussion at our last meeting, which is very important to Nanaimo, is the fact that with changes in schools and school catchment areas, there's some challenges with respect to bus service in the Cinnabar area. And it's really refreshing to see the school board, the regional district working together to try to come up with some resources and to solve that challenge ahead of us. It's a very collaborative approach. On Friday, I attended a fundraiser for the Departure Bay Refugee Sponsorship Group at Miller's Pub. They are $5,000 into their $40,000 required to bring a family here, and it was a very, very good project and event. On Saturday, I attended the open house for the RCMP, as did, I believe I saw Councillor Fuller there, and Councillor Kipp, I understand, was there earlier. And where they had a number of volunteers that were reviewing all kinds of activities that the RCMP gets involved in that I'm sure that we don't even think about. There was the tactical units, there was the dog squad, there was victim services, Marine squad, all aspects of RCMP were displayed that day. Also that morning, I had the pleasure of going down to Hawthorne Park, and that's really timely. Hawthorne Park is a small park, a small community park that was, some of which was ravaged by fire last summer during the driest days of the year. And on Saturday, with the help of Parks, Recreation and Environment, they were actually starting to plant upwards of 150 trees to replace the trees that were burned in the meadow adjacent to that park. That's a that's an excellent program. All of the seedlings that were provided through the TD Friends of the Environment and the Tree Canada Foundation. Next week, on May 26th from 4 to 7, there's going to be, which is co-sponsored by the Harewood Neighborhood Association, Colliery Dams Parks and Preservation Society, and the City of Nanaimo, community workshop on the Colliery Dam improvements. And it's based on what we can do now that we've got through some significant works at that park to improve it and make it even better. Following that, this T-shirt that all of us were supposed to be wearing this evening is the Bike to Work recognition, which starts on Bike to Work Week starts on May the 30th. And there's going to be all kinds of celebrations, including a wind-up barbecue at Woodland School. Rock City Cycles and Aerosmith Bikes have donated a brand new bike for those who participate and register. And I believe it's going to be a bigger event than it was last year, which is bigger than the year before, and so on. One thing I do need to say on another item is that now that we're getting, as the last thing I'll say, now that we're getting close to the driest times of the year and we've had very little rain, please be careful out there, particularly in our parks and particularly with smoking materials, because we certainly know the potential of what can be happening or what could happen in the event of an accident with smoking materials. And that's all I have. So, next item. Corporate Services, Development Permit Number DP 955 at 867 Bruce Avenue and 538 8th Street. There's a staff recommendation on page 19, and that is to present Council with a development permit amendment application for a mixed-use commercial and 27-unit multifamily residential development.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Development Variance Permit Number DVP 279 at 1850 Northfield Road. It's requested that Council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 279 at 1850 Northfield Road. Thank you, ma'am. The microphone's on. If you can just step up close to it and give us your name and address for the record, please.
It's Diane Larson, 1228 Marina Way, Nanuus. And I'm a property manager for NAI Commercial, and I represent 1850 Northfield Road, the strata. And I just wanted to say a few brief words to let you know that the owners there have, since 2007, had parking bylaws in place. We've been managing it sort of in-house with no complaints from any of the surrounding neighbors. And they have drafted a bylaw which was included in your package to deal with any new owners or new renters to say that they have to advise us what their parking requirements are before the properties are sold or leased, so that the strata council and the owners will have some impact on that. And also for special events when there's extra parking, we're trying to, with this bylaw, get them to park off lot, and we've got some ideas for that. So they're very committed to keeping control of the parking on this lot. So that's all I wanted to say for them. Okay.
Any questions for the delegation?
Please.
Councillor Beswick would like to ask you a question, ma'am. Please come back.
Sorry, my apologies. So in 1999 is when this project's bylaw for 75, or I think it was 76 on-site parking stalls was created. And have you witnessed that there is not a requirement for that many parking spaces?
No, there's been things that have happened around there with development going on. Sometimes you get people off that don't belong there parking on lot. And sometimes you'll have, the union will have meetings, so you have all the members coming, and that creates an issue. Sometimes the Vancouver Island Construction Association has classes, and that can create an issue with the parking. So we come up with this bylaw to work a way around that. And the adjoining lot, the truckers that live that are in behind, when we had water ingress problems and we had work going on there for months and months and months, they allowed us to park some of the people to park there, and they're probably willing to do it again for specific groups that say the union, or if they're having classes, the construction association. So that's the only issues that we've had with parking on that lot, and certainly no complaints from any neighbors about parking on there.
So just a
Some of the
follow-up.
use changed because that was a warehouse complex when it was built. And so what's sort of been happening is there's still warehouse applications, but there's also office because people have mezzanines, and there's extra people than what there were when it was like totally warehouse. So it's changed a bit.
So am I understanding that the reduction from 76 to 51 will help resolve the concern with the somehow with this new bylaw?
Yeah, what they're saying, what the city is saying to me and to the owners there is that there is not adequate parking for the current usage, which has changed a little bit since what it was in the beginning. You know, it was all warehouse space. It was just empty shell warehouse space. So over the years, it's just changed so that we end up with some of the offices have upstairs and it's office. It's not all warehouse. So because of that, we are supposed to have more parking stalls than we do. So a letter that I put with our application shows that they have Claro schooling that's on there, and the usage you would think for school would be huge, but it really is not. It's 2 teachers and parents dropping off their children. They drop them off, they park there for 5 minutes, drop them off, pick them up in the afternoon. So even though it looks like it's a school and there should be way more parking, it's actually quite adequate. And the owners and myself have really watched carefully what's going on. If I get a complaint, I deal with it right away. So we, as far as I'm concerned, we have not been having issues that we haven't been able to handle.
Thank you.
So.
Councillor Brennan.
I would just move that we receive the delegation.
Actually, I've got a question for you. Okay. So, if I've got this correct, and I know people who have been in that complex before, and as it's morphed since it was originally constructed, and it's taken on some of these new uses, some of the spaces have been vacant for a significantly much longer time than they should have been, based on some of the challenges with the strata wanting to be able to grant the ability for a certain type of use, because this parking problem has been ongoing for some time. So you believe that with this new fixed number, self-managed, that it will provide you with more flexibility to be able to, well, let these people get business licenses, and continue to have an active complex based on not having these challenges. If you'd like to self-manage them, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you. Now we can go.
Okay.
I don't see any further questions. Thank you.
Okay, I would move the staff recommendation that council issue development variance permit.
Sorry.
Wrong one?
Sorry.
Wrong one?
No, I pushed the wrong button. I'm sorry.
Oh. Can
Carry
I
on.
continue? Okay. Okay, to reduce the required number of parking spaces to 51.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Fuller, thank you. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Development Variance Permit DVP 285 at 1285 College Drive. The purpose is to present council with a development variance permit application for a lot depth variance in order to facilitate a 3-lot residential subdivision at 1285 College Drive, and it's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 285.
Mayor and Council, my name is Brock Williamson. I'm an agent for the applicant and the owners that are sitting up here. Just wanted to let you know we've read the staff report and we concur with it, and contacted the neighbors directly affected by this, and there are no objections, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
No questions for the speaker.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I'll move the staff recommendation that Council issue development variance permit number DVP 285 at 1285 College Drive to reduce the minimum lot depth from 30 meters to 29.13 meters.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Brennan. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Development Variance Permit number DVP 286 at 4750 Rutherford Road, and that's to present council with a Development Variance Permit application for a rooftop sign variance at 4750 Rutherford Road. It's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 286. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to DVP 286? And for the third and final time, anyone wishing to speak to DVP 286? Seeing none?
None, I would recommend that council issue development variance permit number DVP 286 at 4750 Rutherford Road to allow all 3 separate signs to project over the roof line of the existing shopping centre.
I'll second that.
And seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Any discussion? Councillor Fuller.
I'm curious as to why they really need it above the roof line. If I look at the pictures here, it looks like the sign could be lowered enough. And I'd also like to know if there are any other examples of us allowing this to be done before. If there are, then when can we revisit the sign bylaw and not have to be doing these things all the time? Few questions.
Okay, so if I can help on the... Okay, just give us just 1 minute. It's going to be great. Thank you. With respect to the height exceeding the top of the building, that's being used all around town. The latest ones we did were it was the Dairy Queen, I believe, and Save On Foods.
Yeah,
just the style of their signage.
So once that's why I say maybe we need to revisit the bylaw if they're going to come before us and we're going to approve them all the time.
Well,
I guess the more appropriate question would be, have any of these come before us that we have not approved?
Have any of them come before us that we've not approved? Yes. Councillor Bestwick. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment that there's several examples of establishments that we've allowed the sign to exceed over, and I think the point that Councillor Fuller is making, not whether we do it or not, but whether or not we have to do it every time one comes in front of us. In this case, I think it's probably 2 or 3% or 4% of the sign. The peak of the sign exceeds the top of the roof line. And given that I've typically supported any sign variance for the most part that comes in front of us. I think that this one's appropriate. We have declined others before, and they have caused a considerable amount of grief before. I'll be supporting this variance.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak to DVP 286? Second time? And for the third and final time, anyone else wishing to speak to DVP 286?
Make a motion.
Okay. Seeing none? There's already motion, so call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next one, development variance permit number DVP 287 at 3713 Cavendish Boulevard to present council with a development variance permit application for a heat pump located beside a single residential dwelling at 3713 Cavendish Boulevard. And it's requested that council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 287.
I was just going to suggest to Councillor Hong, if he could press mute. I think there's some things coming through on the telephone.
Are you in communication with Councillor Hong? If you could just ask him to just mute. Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to DVP 287? Thank you. Would somebody like to move the council or move the recommendation? So Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Request for offers at 2103 Bowen Road. The purpose is to obtain council approval to market the surplus 0.471 acre or 0.191 hectare piece of city-owned land at 2103 Bowen Road. And there's recommendation on page 73.
So move 1 and 2.
I'll second that.
Councillor Bestwick moves 1 and 2, and seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. And discussion. Councillor Brennan.
One of the notes in the report is that our staff has appraised the lands and they've identified that this is surplus. So can you tell me what kind of criterion we use to determine surplus?
Sorry, so what we do is we look at strategic plan, figure out where we're looking for land for different projects. Through the supportive housing project, we looked at numerous sites. One of the goals was to spread supportive housing throughout the community. And so because of that, we already knew there was going to be a site on Lower Bowen Road, and there was a site on Boundary, so we did not identify this as a housing site. We also look at future road projects to make sure we don't need the land for road widening. And we also look at utility projects. So we do a referral to all the departments in the city before we deem it surplus.
Okay, well, I'm happy to hear that because that would be my next question, was whether the zoning would have allowed for social housing, but you're saying that concentration issues mean that we don't really want to do that right across the street from.
Yeah, exactly. We have the affordable housing project across the street.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Fuller.
I'm just curious how you choose which properties that we're going to put up for sale.
So we developed this property management strategy that sets out all the properties, our inventory, as well as properties that are surplus. And then we have a short, medium, and long-term strategy to dispose of properties. So properties that don't require a lot of work or effort to dispose of tend to be short-term. And ones that require more work, like doing works and services or rezonings, tend to be medium-term. And properties that have a lot of challenges tend to be the long-term ones. So this was a property that had all the works and services done. We actually did rezone this property to make it more marketable, but that's all we've done to it.
Thank you.
Councillor Bestwick?
Thank you. Question to staff, please. You mentioned in your report that the offers will be, the request for offers will be posted, and then you will evaluate them. If they return with a same amount, how does one go about determining what offer is better than the other one when they're both the same, or if they are both the same, or otherwise? How do you go about that, please?
We were fortunate we had this problem when we sold the property on the corner of Boundary and Dufferin as well. So we actually had 3 bids that were exactly the same. So we went back to the 3 proponents and said, highest offer takes it. And the 3 of them had a chance to bid one more time. And the highest bid was the one we took.
Thank you. So there's no other subjective criteria other than the price? So if somebody comes in and says, I'll pay this and I'm going to do that on it, or so none of that happens? It's just...
I guess it depends. If someone has a lot of conditions, but a higher price, then that would be different than someone with no subjects and a lower price. We'll bring that to council for you to review. You'll be the ones making those decisions.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's not sort of what I'm not, that's not my line of approach or questioning. It's just simply if there's multiple offers, which I assume there will be, and they're not being asked to provide any expressions of interest for what they do on that site, other than a holding property perhaps, or development of some description in the future, does what development they propose to do in the future bear any relevance to their offer, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, we've asked them to provide some background information on what their vision for the property is, what they want to do. That could be a tiebreaker as well, I guess, for you to determine.
Great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good for now, council? All right. Question?
Did we make a motion?
Let's move to a second. All right. All in favor? Pass unanimously. Thank you. Did we do it? Sorry, Ms. Gurry, we did 1 and 2 as a thing?
Yes, we did 1 and
Thank
2
you.
together.
Hey, G, disposition of city-owned land, 1406 Bowen Road to Nanaimo Aboriginal Center Society. First, we have a delegation. Mr. Tim McGrath. Thank you, Tim. 10 minutes, please, sir.
Good evening, Council. My name is Tim McGrath, 431 3rd. I understand that there's a covenant on the property, and that is to also be removed, so I don't know which order Council wants to talk about it in, but although I agree with the premise of it, there are some concerns. It is no longer now being classified as supportive housing. And then I asked Council the question, why are we giving the land away? The land is being transferred at minimal cost, and I don't understand why. I would suggest to Council that the matter be referred back to staff to get a proper report, and then to have it come forward again. The other issue at hand is, of course, the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre, I understand, is separate and apart from the Nanaimo First Nations. So why are we giving away the land? Is this part of the upcoming land title argument? You know, the Wellcock properties, Lindley Valley, and half a dozen other things. Should this be held off until then? Once we determine what is going to be done with various properties around the city, then this should be part of it. It's as simple as it can get. To go ahead tonight would be basically giving it away for nothing. All the remarks I have.
Councillor Beswick, you may have a question.
Thank you. Comments. First, I just want to say thank you for the information that you bring to the podium as your rightful place to do so. And thank you for respecting the work that council has to do and politely taking your seat and waiting for your opportunity at the podium. So I appreciate that, and I think we all appreciate that. When we speak to this piece of property was one of 5 or 6 almost 8 or 9 years ago, I think now, that was dedicated for social housing opportunities. And our role in that was to provide the property, and then the province would do their build and operations and select the operator and so on. This council determined, and of course with staff support, that we had done a considerable amount of social housing work, and that this was, in some cases, resembled a very similar opportunity for social housing to the benefit of and the greater good of the entire community. We were always donating this property. We were always dedicating this property to a social housing description of some type or other. And as it turns out, this project was brought in front of us about 16 or 18 months ago, and it had considerable merit to address an environment that wasn't being addressed. And it was near the university, and it was on a bus route, and it's in a good location, and it has so many positives for the community, for the greater good of the community, and for the greater good of the 36 units that people will be occupying this location. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your concerns. And then that's number one. Number two is the NAC, the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre, is not connected in the regard, in the context that you're making reference to the Snuneymuxw First Nations land claims and otherwise. And we've been informed, we've been told that, we've received that for clarity and clarification. So I think it's important that it's an important question, and I think it's important that you have that response. So I hope that helps you to understand the direction that Council is moving in on this property, and I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bestwick. I appreciate what Council does do, and I apologize to the rest of Council for the incident with the T-shirt. Hopefully, if people are allowed to bring signs, then the T-shirt I would agree to be allowed. But I think that's an item for another evening.
I've got two more speakers, Mr. McGrath, if I may. Or do you want to rebuttal to Mr. Councillor Bestwick?
I was just going to ask Mr. Bestwick about the lack of clarity in the report. Your description does not seem to be clear on the reports. It says that it is currently zoned for supportive housing. If that's not the case, and that it's going to be used as a general rental, from what I understand now, I think that has to be clarified, at least for the public when this comes before Council. You know the history. Current public are looking at the reports and can't see what you're describing.
If I wanted to speak? Okay, maybe I can just try to address this. Mr. McGrath, the intent, I'm comfortable with the report. I don't have any issues with the report, but as you say, it's perhaps because I'm extremely familiar with this particular file. And the fact that, we're kind of dancing on the head of a pin, whether it's social housing or whether it's not, or whether it's designated for this particular use, and that's what we're adjusting. That's what we're amending this so that, and it's not trying to divert or not let the public know what it is that the intentions are. This has been an ongoing project and file for many, many, many months. We've dealt with this at the regional district. We've dealt with this here. It's a very important step in working with the Snuneymuxw First Nations and the community. It is so important, and this is a great step. And if this report isn't clear, then I'm not sure what could be included
Well,
to make it more
as
clear.
you just said, it is an important step with this Nanaimo, but this doesn't have anything to do with this Nanaimo, and that's why I'm asking the questions.
It doesn't have anything directly to do with land claims, titles with Nanaimo First Nations, but in all likelihood, there's people that will be relocating here, and its intent is for families, and its intent is for young families that are going to university that otherwise don't have proper accommodation for which to maintain their lifestyle, their family lifestyle, while they're going to university, among countless other reasons that are all real, that are all valid, and that makes this an extremely good use of this location.
Okay.
And I'm comfortable with it moving forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller, did you have anything to add?
Not so much as to the delegation, but once we've moved the motion and so on, then I'll speak.
Great. Motion to receive the delegation. Moved, seconded by Councillor. Okay, Councillor. Okay, questions? Oh, pardon me. Okay, great. Thank you. So, all those in favor? Of receiving the delegation. Thank you. Thank you. Opposed? Motion carries.
I would move all three staff recommendations, if that's possible.
Okay, well, Councillor Fuller is next up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, no, after the motion.
Okay, after the motion, then you're moving the motion. Thank you very much.
And I'll second it.
And you're seconding it, Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Okay, discussion. Do you wish to speak to it? No? Okay, Councillor Fuller. Motion's on the floor.
Alrighty. With regards to the report itself, it might have made it more clear to the public if a better description of what is being proposed for the property were in the report. It's fairly vague. We know about it because we have discussed it a number of times, but the public doesn't get the full gist of it. A question I have to staff is, with the other properties that we had supportive housing on, were they leased or sold?
60 years for $1.
Exactly. So what I would like is to be clarified to the public is why is this one being sold for $1? And if that requires Mr. Beaton from the Nanaimo Aboriginal Center to come up and explain something to us, I'd be more than happy if he did.
Chris?
Do you have an answer to his question?
I think Mr. Bean can probably explain it better than I can. Yeah.
Mr. Beaton.
I know what the answer is, but they don't.
First of all, thank you very much for continuing to support this project. Councillor Fuller, to answer your question, it's a new funding arrangement with BC Housing that requires this type of relationship with municipalities. It's not unique to the City of Nanaimo or for the City of Nanaimo. There's an expression of interest out right now for a new $50 million fund of affordable housing in the province, and it will, in all likelihood, require the same disposition of lands. It's a partnership between BC Housing, between a municipality and a nonprofit organization. And again, the new funding requirements and agreements require the transfer of land to the nonprofit. Hope, Mr. Corson, that's
how I understand it, yes.
And I thank you for that. I knew that, but the public didn't.
Right.
So the public might have come back asking those same questions. So
Right.
I just thought we clarify it right off the bat. Thanks.
welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan and Yoakum, do you have any questions for the delegation? Okay, good. Thank you, sir. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, did Councillor Bestwick make the motion?
Yes.
Okay. The question I have for staff is, 3 or 4 pages into this report, there's an attachment of an in-camera report. Is that now open? Or are other people seeing what I see, or is this still a closed document? I don't know.
Yeah, I attached it because the report had all the background on the for people to understand.
Right.
And it
So-
already it seems to have come out anyway.
Okay.
So that's why I attached it for information.
So I can talk about it?
I think so, yes.
Okay, thank you. I think that kind of the difference here is between affordable housing and supported housing. And when we usually talk about supported housing, we're talking about supporting individuals with issues that make it difficult for them to maintain their housing and stay in housing. In this instance, we're using the term affordable housing, but it's necessary in order to support the students who will be going to school because they need to have good, solid footing in housing. And so I think that's the difference, and maybe for some it's a confusing difference. It might seem small, but it's not. It's a different kind of support, and it's the reason that the support is necessary is to enable students who don't necessarily live in Nanaimo who are coming here, and they need to have the supports of. They don't have the supports of their family living with them, and so this kind of housing is an excellent place for young people to live, to stay in school, which is what we all want in the end, to make sure that kids get into the university and stay there and complete their education. So I'm very happy to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Yocum.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to state I'm really pleased to be part of a council as a person of Indigenous descent of a move as such. It's a bold move. It's a just move, and it's the right thing to do. And I'd like to thank Mr. Beaton for getting this project going, initiative. Otherwise, I'm not sure where that lot would have ended up down the road. So we're going to get great usage of it, and I couldn't think of a better usage. And again, I'm just very proud to be a part of council that's forward thinking, especially in the era of reconciliation. So I just wanted to say those few words. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
I think the other thing that hasn't been said out loud, although it is in the information, and that is that this is targeting Aboriginal students who are coming from out of town and coming from their communities and have struggled with getting the support they need for housing here in Nanaimo, and often they are leaving families behind, young families behind, and it makes it very difficult, especially when you're coming from very small communities where they really depend on their communities for support. This will allow them to bring their families with them and be able to focus on the task at hand, which is getting a good education. I see this as an absolutely excellent addition to the supports that we have in Nanaimo for various groups of people who need those supports. And I would commend Mr. Beaton and all of the people that have been working on this. It's an excellent project. You've certainly got the magic touch when it comes to sourcing out the right people and the right organizations to get this kind of a job done, and I really commend you for it. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's no further questions with respect to this, but I wanted to ask a question, and that is, I know it's unusual. So when we normally lease something, as we've done for the other projects, for 60 years, it puts the project in a wee bit of a conundrum. They're going to be required at 60 years to renegotiate a new lease, obviously. And I know this is unusual, but it's not unusual in the business world, and that is, why could we not consider a covenant for repurchase of the property for $1 upon the end of its use for this purpose?
Yes, you could do that.
So I would put it to council that once the use of this property changes, would council have an interest in requesting that a covenant be put on the property that we have the option to purchase it back for $1. Councillor Yocum.
I was on council, it was in your term, when you guys sold that that site for a profit, was this the same language in there, what you're suggesting right now, the old city hall? I believe it was sold for $1 for a for-profit group, which it's fine. Well, I'm not, so I retract that comment, but nevertheless, is that language in that for a for-profit group? Here we're talking about a group, a project that has, this is definitely a nonprofit. We're dealing with the most marginalized group where there's going to be no money involved. It's all basically going to be provincially funded and maybe possibly federally. I'm not sure. And all of a sudden you want to throw the business lingo around? And we did not do it actually in a real business case of the old city hall. I can imagine what else in the city's history. So I have a little bit of reluctance. I mean, the annex. Sorry, Jimmy. So I have a little bit of issue of singling out a project as such. I have no comfort. I have comfort on working with Mr. Bean and what he sees would be a conversation we had, but he's sort of blindsided with that view on the spot, considering it hasn't happened before. So to say it's common in business, well, it didn't happen in that business case. So I've got issue with that. Thank you.
Well, if we were to compare the two of them, that one there, we had a piece of property that was worth $500,000 that had roughly $1 million demolition cost on it. So the circumstances are very different. This is a raw piece of property. All I was trying to do by bringing that up was simply trying to address Councillor Fuller's concerns. Well, you asked a question, so I thought I would throw that out there as an alternative to what you were suggesting. Councillor Fuller, you're next up. Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Sammer.
Yeah, certainly. It's an interesting idea. Perhaps one example is when council is considering the sale of 100 Gordon Street, but this is a very different circumstance for affordable housing. And in this instance, there would be a building constructed on it, so it wouldn't be a matter of simply repurchasing the property for $1. So it's an interesting idea, but not really applicable for this circumstance. I think the other thing I just wanted to chime in on the positive is that this type of project is a great one that highlights the city supporting VIU and Indigenous communities, furthering education. So it's a good example of the city doing things with other partners and supporting other partners within the city to achieve certain outcomes, and in this case, affordable housing for Indigenous. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Councillor Fuller. No, I did that. Councillor Fuller, please go ahead.
BC Housing is changing the way that they fund, and so a lot of things where we would fund the affordable, BC Housing would fund rent subsidies, etc. Not so much rent subsidies, but properties would build affordable housing. They would charge a nominal rent, and then they would receive monies from BC Housing in order to hire staff, et cetera, and cut down costs. 60 years down the road, that organization still does not own the property. So they can't use that property to leverage other monies. BC Housing wants to cut back on the amount of money that they're going to end up having to contribute to nonprofits over the years. And so in order to do this, they would prefer to see more of these projects being put on land owned by the nonprofit. It's a great concept. This is the first one we'll be doing in Nanaimo. And the interesting thing is, 60 years from now, they'll be coming to the council at Nanaimo to buy the property on Boundary for $1. So it's just the way things are moving with the provincial government and funding. And that's what I wanted to get. It wasn't that I opposed anything. I wanted the public to get an understanding of this, which is why I asked the original question.
Thank you. See no further questions. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next one, covenant amendment application for 1406 Bowen Road. And staff recommendation that council direct staff to proceed with a public hearing for covenant amendment application number CA04 at 1406 Bowen Road.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Pratt, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Any discussion? Councillor Thorpe.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I think there was a question earlier about the covenant and the removal, and just to clarify, the covenant, the reason for the covenant was to do with supportive housing, and this project no longer will be technically supportive housing, but instead will be affordable housing. So the covenant is not needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
I believe the covenant amendment application that we're doing actually gives us an out if they don't start building in 3 years. So we can purchase it back from them in 3 years if they haven't started anything. So that's a good thing.
That was in the original motion.
Was it in the original motion?
2019, number 2.
Oh, okay. I thought that was part of the covenant. But hey, it's good to know.
Thank you. Okay, no further discussion. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Are you opposed, Councillor Brennan? Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Regional Growth Strategy Amendment Bylaw number 1615-01, 2016. The purpose is to present Council with the proposed bylaw amendment for Regional District of Nanaimo Regional Growth Strategy Bylaw for consideration. And we have one delegation, Mr. Tim McGrath.
Evening, Council. My name is Tim McGrath, 431 3rd. On this item, possibly the agenda could be worded a little differently. The difficulty here is I don't understand why it's going before a regional council and getting 2 readings before it comes here for us to discuss it. Maybe a report could be coming from regional council and then our city hall can discuss it. Doing it the way it's being done seems to be, the appearance is that you're putting the cart before the horse, as we've seen with the parcel tax, and we've seen with some of the other legislation. So maybe somebody can explain to me why the cart's before the horse.
Exactly the same thing's happening down at the Capital Regional District right now with their regional growth strategy, and the process is that it gets 2 readings at the regional district, because then otherwise they have nothing to come forward to us with. It has to have the first 2 readings at the regional district. Then it comes to us for comment.
I don't understand why it has to go through regional and putting the cart before the horse. That's
because
the question.
it's their regional growth strategy, not ours.
So should they then be, as I suggested, sending us a report on what they want to present before it's actually dealt with at regional council? If you're saying use the CRD as an example, that can be a real messy one, because look what they're doing with their sewage. You know, I don't want to do that.
The 2 items are completely unrelated. They're going through a regional growth strategy amendment right now. They're doing exactly the same thing.
Unrelated, then I don't know why you brought it up.
The sewage treatment plant is unrelated, sir.
Okay, so we'll get back to the original question, and what I'm asking is why is the cart being put before the horse? Why can regional, the RDN, not send us a report as to what they would like to do? Not have first and second reading, simply a report. Council here would then discuss it before we get into the mess that we got into with the land tax, where we entered down the road, we got halfway down the road and realized we couldn't back up.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Pratt, Kippen, Bestwick, do you wish to speak to the delegation?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Mine was to the delegation.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
On page 104 of our agenda tonight is a letter from the RDN So the regional growth strategy is the overwhelming document. It's above our own OCP for the community because it's the regional district of Nanaimo's regional growth strategy. So what we did out at the regional board is we're looking at making the minor amendment to the OCP changes to the regional growth strategy and to any minor amendment. So it has to go out there first so that the board at the RDN says, yes, we accept the staff report and we want to make these changes. So now send it out to all of our local government authorities and we have a date to respond. The way the rules are written for the regional growth strategy is we have a certain time to respond. If we don't respond, it's deemed to be accepted by our governance model. If we get this in front of our council now, we've done 2 readings out there, so we will write back or pass this or not pass it. That'll get sent back out to the RDN. They'll put that in their final report and we vote on it out there as an acceptance or a denial. But the first step is this is an RDN plan that they're asking us if we like the changes. They're actually giving us the ability to input now at this council with this document. I know it's a struggle. The cart before the horse, you're wrong. The cart is out there, and we're part of the horse that pulls it along by our taxation, but the cart is the RDN's cart, and they're asking us if we're in or we're not, and it doesn't matter if we are or we're not until we vote out there. We could say no to this here, it could go out there and be turned down, or it could be voted on and passed. Mix of 2 governments.
Still go either way, whether the city of Nanaimo wants it or not? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Good. So why is it here?
Because they're being nice and asking us. Instead of just putting upon us, they're giving us the ability to respond to it. And it's us too. There's 7 of us sit out.
And I'm just wondering, if you've already voted on it, then why is it coming back here then?
Well, I would suggest, I have seen this. We had an issue in 2 years ago out of the RDN where Qualicum wanted a minor amendment. They called it a minor amendment. It came to the regional growth or to the RDN. And they were going to I think it was quadruple the amount of land available for development in Qualicum. They were opening up the whole area of Qualicum and not doing and we didn't consider it as a minor amendment. The board voted that it wasn't a minor amendment, and we saw a flaw in the process. So at the regional board, the staff report, which is on page 104 and 105, very simple report, said that we should have these changes so that when a minor amendment for the regional growth strategy or the review of it happens, it's under these new criteria. So it more defines what is a minor and a major amendment. Personally, when I voted out there on that Qualicum issue, I voted it was a major, bringing in over, I think, doubling or tripling their developable land and sort of expanding out to the borders of Qualicum. And it wasn't a minor amendment, it was a major amendment. So this criteria took 2 years. It's at our table now to try and clean up.
Okay.
I hope that long-winded answer helped.
It helps. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. There's a motion on page 102. Do we have a mover and a seconder for the motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick, seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, council appointment to the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation Board, and the purpose is to obtain council direction regarding its appointment of a senior staff member to the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation Board of Directors. There's a motion on page 108. Councillor Bestwick.
I would so move that council appoint Tracy Samra, CAO, as council's appointed director to the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation Board, and direct the corporate officer to advise the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation in writing of the appointment.
Is there a seconder?
Seconded.
Seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Appointment of deputy corporate officers. There is a recommendation on page 134. I'm not going to read them out, but they are 1, 2, and 3.
So moved.
Moving. Your Worship, there's on the addendum, there was 3 and 4 added as well.
Yes. So maybe we will go through them for the sake of the folks at home and in the gallery. The motion that council renew the appointment of Donna Smith, Legislative Services Steno Coordinator, appoint Sheila Gurry, Legislative Services FOI Claims Coordinator, and appoint Victor Mema, Director of Finance, as Deputy Corporate Officers until June 30th, 2017, to fulfill the duties as set out in Section 148 of the Community Charter.
Sorry.
We've got 3 more to go.
Oh, you're going to do all.
Number 2, to establish the order in which the Deputy Corporate Officer performs the duties in the absence of the Corporate Officer as follows. A, Donna Smith. B, Sheila Gurry. C, Victor Mema. Number 3, accept and confirm the resignation of Mr. Chris Jackson from the position of Manager of Legislative Services effective 2016 May 27th, and rescind his appointment as Corporate Officer effective 2016 May 20th, pursuant to the City of Nanaimo Officers Appointment and Delegation Bylaw 2006 number 7031 and Section 148 of the Community Charter. And number 4, to accept and confirm the resignation of Mr. Guillermo Ferrero from the position of Director of Information Technology, Legislative Services and Communications, effective 2016 May 31st, and rescind his appointment as Deputy Corporate Officer pursuant to the Nanaimo Officers Appointment Delegation Bylaw 2006-7031. Do we have a mover and a seconder?
I move.
Moved?
No, I move. Oh, you move. Okay, you move, I'll second.
Moved by Councillor Bestwick and seconded by Councillor Pratt. Any discussion? Councillor Yoakum.
Just quickly, Your Worship, I just want to, with Mr. Ferrero and Mr. Jackson, applaud these young men for climbing in their world of the corporate ladder per se. I don't know the right lingo, but I'm really proud of them. And there are some openings, and they'll go be champions in Ladysmith and up in Powell River. So, and thank them for the good work they did on behalf of the city, and leaving on good, positive terms to go enhance their career as they climb up the leadership ranks. Just want to share that message, and thank you.
I would wholeheartedly agree with your sentiments. Councillor Fuller.
I too would agree with Councillor Yoakum, and I'm of the firm belief that Mr. Jackson, in 15 to 20 years, will be coming back to Nanaimo in a higher position, and Nanaimo would be well worth looking at him 20 years from now, because he is a man of ethics, and he's got the potential to go far.
Thank you very much. All I can say is he's going to have a tough time in Powell River. There's a couple of councillors up there that he's going to have some challenges with, all in a fun way. No. Thank you. See no further speakers. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation Annual General Meeting. The purpose is to obtain council direction regarding its attendance and participation at the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation Annual General Meeting. There's a staff recommendation on page 136 that council representing the City of Nanaimo as the sole shareholder of the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation, 1, attend the annual general meeting to be held Tuesday, May 24th, and 2, direct the corporate officer to advise the Nanaimo Economic Development Corporation in writing.
So moved.
So it's moved and seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Any questions? I have one. That is that according to and I was having trouble following it, according to the documents we received in the staff report, the City of Nanaimo has 1 share, and yet I see 100 common shares in the letters patent.
Page 112 shows the 100 shares, and the next page over 113 shows 1 common share.
Yes.
Well, I can check on that for you, but the city is the sole shareholder, so they may have decided to change the number of shares that they're issuing. It's a technical question that I can look up, but we are the only shareholder, and that right is exercised by the city as represented by mayor and council.
Thank you. No, I was just confused by that. I didn't know because it seemed contradictory. Obviously. Now, this one here, the motion is on the floor as it stands right now. There were options that were given to us, and that was that we would go as an entire council, and the other one was that we could send a representative. This motion that stands on the floor right now is that the entire council attends the meeting. Great, thank you. All right, so call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Regional District of Nanaimo Regional Parks and Trails Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1231-05, 2016. And the purpose is to obtain council's consent for the adoption of a Regional District of Nanaimo bylaw. So, staff recommendations on page 139 that council consent to the adoption of Regional District of Nanaimo Regional Parks and Trails Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1231-05, 2016, and further that the Regional District of Nanaimo be notified accordingly.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Pratt. Seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Thank you. Any discussion? See, Councillor Fuller.
Just for Mr. McGrath's benefit, this is the RDN following the lead of the City of Nanaimo.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the reconsideration of DVP 989 at 3795 Glen Oaks Drive. Now, this was heard on May the 2nd, and my rationale for bringing it back for reconsideration is that after further review of the details, and that staff's recommendation to deny was due to loss of one parking space, and it appears as though the applicant has found a way to mitigate that loss so that there would be no net loss of parking on that one. Are there any other pictures available of this to the... Keep going. Oh, it's not good.
Got worse. No,
Got worse as we went.
No, there's another. Oh.
No. So I think there were a number of council members that went to. That's probably not too bad. There were a number of council members that went out to view the site. Myself and three others met with the applicant. And it was, although at first it seemed quite confusing, and ultimately, at the end of the day, I think we managed to wrap our heads around it. The staff had a concern that, due to the loss of that parking space. In the staff report, there was also notation, which I thought was strange at the late hour, that there was the potential for suites. However, at this juncture, there are no potential for suites because both houses have been built and they're both on crawl space. If you look at this picture, if I've got it correct, where it has the number, what is it? Obviously, the lat long, obviously, north of 49 degrees. At that point there was intended to be, in order to allow the three homes to go in there, it was intended to be a driveway that would go in there that would be shared by all three homes. And that the driveway would go to the right when you drove in, and it would go down and end up about where the D in drive is, and it would turn up into the house. There would be no access to the roadway. What we, my simple sort of evaluation of it, when I sat at the driveway across from the, you can see the white space there underneath Oaks, which is in that little clover leaf there, or in that U shape, if you will, that if you look straight across there, that's about where the driveway was. And it became clear to me that if there was a too wide driveway there, and as we've now learned, a desire by the applicant to put in a hammerhead, which would sit to the right of that as you entered the property, you would actually get better parking if it was done in that fashion than by the original concept of going along the front lawn, if you will, which would take up most of the front yard of the additional house between right about where the Glen is there. And it seems like a reasonable solution that staff were very concerned about the loss of one parking space because a significant variance had been given for the entire subdivision, and now.
Do we need a motion to
No.
consider first?
No.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
Even the mayor has the right to bring back an issue at the next opportunity, which this is, but it still requires a motion for us to, so we vote first to reconsider it, and then the motion to reconsider, I believe. I may be wrong, I'm not usually. But I think we have to have a reconsideration motion.
Yes, we need to have the reconsideration motion moved and seconded and then passed, and then we would
Debate.
and then we would move the original DP 985.
If I can be so bold, with all due respect, under bylaw 7060, under a reconsideration motion brought forward by a councillor or a member of council, it must be brought forward by a member who voted on the prevailing side, and it may be seconded by any member. If we turn our attention to section 131 of the charter, without limiting the authority of a council to reconsider a matter, the mayor may require council to reconsider and vote again on a matter that was subject to a vote. As restrictions on the authority under subsection 1, a mayor may only initiate a reconsideration action under this section at the same council meeting as the vote took place or within the 30 days following that meeting.
Your Worship, that's exactly it. You have to ask for a reconsideration motion, and then we vote on the other motion. It's pretty clear to me.
No, initiate reconsideration.
Initiate a reconsideration means we have a vote to reconsider.
Councillor Brennan.
Did you not say right at the beginning that the mayor could require a reconsideration? Is that not the wording?
Yes.
You can require a vote on a reconsideration. They ask for the vote on the reconsideration.
I thought, okay, I didn't hear it that way. I heard it say the mayor can require a reconsideration. So whatever the parliamentarian decides.
No. Without limiting the authority of a council to reconsider a matter, the mayor may require that council to reconsider and vote again.
I'm just going
reconsider and vote again.
I'm just going by our procedural bylaw. And it says that a reconsideration motion must be brought forward by, so just the way that the reconsideration motion, it's the motion for reconsideration, that's how I was taught or interpreted it.
A couple of things, Councillor Brennan. Adding it as a reconsideration to the agendas, your vote was on the amendment to the agenda, not on whether or not the reconsideration was appropriate. And then without having any of those sections in front of me, but the lead-in phrase, without limiting the ability of council to deal with reconsideration, which council has done in the procedure bylaw, it set a process for this. So in the absence of that, the mayor would have been able to bring something forward. So Sheila and I and Donna discussed this beforehand. I wanted to make sure we knew what the process was going into reconsideration, and it's just a formal step of voting in favor of doing that, and then you present what you're going to present, and then council votes on it. It's just an extra step, but it's required.
Required that council vote on whether it can come back for reconsideration, then on the motion itself. Well, I brought this purposely forward tonight, simply to allow time, should this conversation come up, that it can still come back on the 30th of the month and still be within the timelines of the 30 days. So I wonder if we should defer this until we seek legal counsel, with all due respect to all parties.
Can we do that, or should we just withdraw?
Well, you've brought it up as a reconsideration vote for this evening, so that's your first step. Does council want to have a reconsideration vote on this particular item? Once you pass that threshold, then you decide whether or not you're going to revote on it and what you will do in those circumstances. Of course, you can defer it to the May 30th. I don't know if that still falls within the
My
time
point of
frames.
order was only to make the process clean. That's all I wanted to do, is make a clean process because I understand our policy. That's all I was doing.
So I would be willing to move this over to the 30th to get an opinion from our legal counsel as to reconsideration.
Okay, Your Worship, that's a committee of the whole meeting. Does that matter?
Can't pass a bylaw.
Yeah, then you're gonna miss the 30-day deadline.
It's not a bylaw.
Yeah.
You could just ask your colleagues to vote on it to see if you're going to consider a reconsideration and then do that.
Yeah.
So if we could, thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Nope, that was.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. It's an interesting point, and I appreciate Councillor Kipp's input. If it simplifies things, I voted in the majority on this, and I am willing to move a request for reconsideration this evening. If there is a seconder, then we can proceed.
Seconded. Okay, so the reconsideration is moved by Councillor Thorpe and seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Councillor Hong?
I will not be reconsidering this because I need also clarification on what we did on 3rd Street. If these situations are the same, and also with what we did, I think, on 104th Street, where the applicant had to wait 6 months before we reconsidered these. So I will not be supporting the reconsideration.
Thank you, Councillor Hong.
Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
Yeah, this is totally bollocksy to me. I mean, you know, I'm glad the proponents have gone out and met with everybody again and given their 52 cents worth and come up with some hammerhead idea, which I don't see a picture of. And until I see something, you know, if you want to bring this motion, if you made a motion to reconsider the original motion on the 30th or the council meeting after that, and some information was brought to me that I could actually see pictures of, then I might support it. But I'm not going to support a reconsideration immediately on something I have no idea what you're talking about, hammerheads and fishtails and whatever. So I'm not going to support a reconsideration tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Kemp. No, I butted in on mine.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. I didn't support this last time, and I would like for our opportunity to avoid these types of situations that we're finding ourselves in here right now. And it's not, to me, about the one parking stall. This is about our process, and this morning there is a pre-council meeting, I would assume, to discuss topics that may emerge that we can address before we get to this point with no information or knowledge whatsoever. And so I would like to see that process cleaned up so that we don't find ourselves having this discussion right now. I would like, if we do wish to bring things back, that council is given proper and adequate notice with all of the relevant information that would support bringing an item back for reconsideration. Because as it stands now, and I'm not suggesting that yourself and 3 councillors and the applicant haven't met on site to discuss solutions, but I'm not familiar with them, and I haven't seen them, and I'd certainly like that opportunity. I have met with the applicant, and I've expressed prior to this new solution my challenges that we were put in 2 weeks ago. And I find now I'm in another challenge that I wish not to be in without the relevant information that I need in which to make a decision. If there's somehow that this can be presented so that there's, as a notice of motion, for whenever we can deal with it at its earliest convenience, with all of the information available to all of and each member of council, I'm 100% in support of doing that. But if I'll vote in favor of reconsideration, but I might vote against the solution because I don't have the information that I need to make that decision. So I'm looking at my council and staff to come up with something for us to say, you can do this next Monday, although it's a committee of the whole, or you can do, but I need the information and I need advance notice. That's my position. Thank you for listening.
So the next two speakers, thank you, Councillor Bestwick. The next two speakers, are they on the reconsideration or the main motion?
I'm going to make a motion to defer this till the 30th so that Councillor Bestwick can have the information he requires as well as everyone else. And I think I heard Mr. Corson say that it wasn't a bylaw, and so it would be okay at a committee of the whole. So that gives us the time that we're seeking. It seems like a fairly simple solution to getting the information and making a decision.
So do we have a seconder for the deferral? Seconder for the deferral?
I'm troubled by a couple of things. First of all, a reconsideration of a vote normally entails reconsideration of the report that's been prepared by staff for council. And in this instance, you're contemplating new evidence, new information that has not been communicated to staff. There has not been a dialogue between this individual and staff regarding these changes. So this is something new to us. We're at somewhat of a disadvantage. And it seems that a reconsideration motion is being used to circumvent the process normally adopted for this. That proponent, or whatever we call, 6 months to bring it back. If it's a reconsideration on the full content of the report that you received on May 2nd that was prepared by staff with those recommendations, that's one thing. To introduce new information suggests that perhaps it has to start with going back to staff, having a conversation with them, providing them with that information so staff can give you a recommendation on what to do. And that normally means doing it in the next 6 months. So this is kind of a hybrid that sort of goes against the processes that we have adopted for the city. And just give you that advice.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I made the motion to reconsider as a courtesy to attempt to move things forward here, but I quite understand and appreciate the comments made by Ms. Sammer and Councillor Bestwick in light of council needing information, staff needing to be aware of proposed solutions and new information. So I quite accept that, and I believe those are valid comments. So I'm in favor of a deferral. But I'm not exactly sure where that leaves us.
Councillor Brennan?
2 weeks for those conversations to be had between the developer and our staff.
I think I'm going to call a question on the, Councillor Yocum, on the deferral.
Yeah, just quickly, wherever this goes. So where are we going to do a motion? Thank you. So staff weren't included in this conversation. I don't know this hammerhead lingo. I'm not a developer. But in due respect, Mr. Mayor, if I will be this conversation, I didn't see a problem in the driveway 2 weeks ago. I was one of the three that voted in favor of this. But if we're going to do changes in here and this and that, I would, I hope staff are included next time this recommendation come forward and your staff's consulted with, and I want to hear from you guys that do this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Call a question. Councillor Bestwick.
I'm really sorry, Mr. Chair, but could I please have the motion read back so I know what it is that I'm voting on?
It would be to refer the reconsideration to the next committee of the whole meeting on May the 30th, 2016.
So does that mean that the matter is essentially referred back to staff? Or does that mean that it's just referred for 2 more weeks, deferred for 2 more weeks?
At this point, the motion would stand that way, yes, that it would just come back to council.
I appreciate your patience with me, but I really feel like I need a second time at coming at this. So the right of reconsideration is right of reconsideration of a vote that was taken on an agenda item. And the agenda item comes with a report. What is being asked is a reconsideration of an amended report and like new options and new considerations that were never properly before council. So you may defer to vote on this, but strictly speaking, it's a reconsideration vote, is a reconsideration of the report and the recommendations that were put in front of council. It's not another way to change those recommendations, change the report, and bring something new in front of council. We have a process for that, and that requires 6 months till it can come forward again. So I want to be clear that you're just deferring voting on the original report, the original recommendations with that original information. If you want something different, then you're overturning the process that we have in place, and we need a motion to direct staff to change how we do this, and I'm not sure if we can. But one more time. So the deferral of the report and the recommendations and the information given to council for a reconsideration vote of that same package. Not an amended package verbally or through another process, just what you had in front of you, the exact thing you had in front of you. And so that would mean these other options and other ways of doing things weren't in front of you. And that's more than a reconsideration of a vote you took. I know it's technical, but that's the reality of it, and I'm good head nods over there from the parliamentary advisors.
Thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Totally agree with you, Ms. Samra. I totally agree. It's exactly what happened on 3rd Street when we turned down their development and that. They came and asked us if they could come back in 3 months instead of 6 months with new information. And for me, that is what this developer should be doing. I totally agree that whatever we vote on next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the road is the exact motion that we voted on back when it was turned down. So that's the one you can vote on. You can't vote on new information without it coming to council as new information. It just does not make sense to do so. You're recreating a report with information that never existed at the time. So until the developers speak with city staff and work that out, maybe they could come to us and ask that we move forward consideration in 3 months. Personally, I don't see what difference 3 months in doing it the proper way or 6 months would make to this. So anyway, thanks.
Councillor Pratt.
I appreciate staff's explanation, and I absolutely get what you're saying. And so I'm also assuming there really is no way around that. I think there is a difference between 3 months and 6 months in a developer's world. No doubt about that. I mean, we're coming into the good building season, so I do get that. If we gave the other developer a 3-month leeway, then that's an option that we could certainly look at. Right? I'm asking staff. So if we absolutely are not allowed to consider any new information 2 weeks from now, then there isn't much point in putting it off for 2 weeks. Unless, I guess, staff meet with the developer themselves, or council meets with the developer themselves. But I understand that we're really circumventing a system here that once we start circumventing it enough, we're going to be having every developer coming and asking us for it to be circumvented. And while I have a great deal of sympathy in this situation for this particular issue, I don't want to be disrupting a system that would just allow other people to take advantage of it too. So the only other option, as far as I can see, is to give them a deferral for 3 months, cut the time down by 3 months and do it that way. That's just a suggestion.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you. The referral, I'm not in favor of currently because it's to change something. We would have to suspend our policy currently, I believe, to receive a report that changes the information and the outcome. Because currently our policy says, you came here, you presented your information, we've turned it down, so we now move forward. You've got 6 months to come back and change it. The 3rd Street was revisited to meet our needs, the needs of the council. This is being asked to meet the needs of the developer, which I understand. I do a fair bit of that help in my lifetime. But so for me, I believe, if I can ask the staff, would we have to suspend council policy in order to enact a change to a report that was received and to change that vote on it? Would we have to suspend the policy on the 6 months and suspend it? And so we made a motion to change this in a shortened period? If you get my question?
I do, but I don't have an answer for that at this time. I'd have to look into that.
Okay, thank you very much. So like I say, I would have rather listened to the referral and listened to it tonight and made a decision. And so it's process. Right?
No, I would accept Ms. Sammer's theory that that deferral is just to revote on what we had in front of us the other day. So the other option and wait the 6 months. The other option is for the developer to, there's 2 built homes there. They're completed. One of them, they can't get access to services because the city won't let them hook up to services. So the only other option would be to put the driveway in as it was originally intended. And I think that's a very, very poor solution. I think everybody I've talked to even contemplate a driveway going down parallel for 100 feet alongside a sidewalk and then turning into a driveway is not a good solution. And that was so that we would not lose a single parking spot out on the road. And I believe that there's new evidence. I've seen new evidence that the developer can accommodate that. So I think the only option open to us right now is to vote against the deferral motion, suspend our procedures, and allow this to come back in 2 weeks with complete information. I mean, part of the staff report, with all due respect, did say that there was potential for significant additional parking because there was these properties were large enough to have suites, and that was 2 weeks ago when we heard this. The houses are built. There is no potential for suites. They're on crawl. So I don't know how long ago the developer had the new drawings done up with the hammerheads and so on and so forth. Why that wasn't in our report, whether it was done before the report, don't really know. But I would think that would be our only option would be to defeat the deferral and come back with a suspension of procedure bylaws. Ms. Sammer.
I would recommend that staff's recommendation on this is to defeat the deferral, to if you wish, allow the mayor to make an argument that the original decision was the wrong decision based on the information that was in that report and the recommendations given to staff. Staff will not be recommending to suspend our policies for development without any contact between us and the developer and any information, and allowing our staff recommendation is to follow the policies and procedures that we have in place. I think it's quite exceptional to be asking to suspend the rules and give one particular developer an advantage a right that nobody else gets. That's quite unusual. I would recommend instead that you direct the developer to come back to staff, make their case again, and staff will consider how to move forward on this particular application. This is quite unusual. So defeat the deferral. You can vote on the compelling case. Did you make the right decision on May 2nd or not? And depending on the outcome of that vote, direct staff to work with the developer and look at options for addressing their needs.
Thank you. Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. We probably talked about this enough, I'm guessing, to have a vote, but this to me is just, we require the information that everybody has, or apparently has, and we need to share that information. If we are going to advance something and then move it forward or not, I know that I will be not supporting the deferral without the benefit of information, and we do set precedent. We have to be careful. Like, this isn't just a one-off, and this is precedent setting. So I want to make it perfectly clear that if we are going to do something that's precedent setting, that is outside of the norm, staff haven't received the proposed changes to alleviate the issue, then I'm sort of flying blind, and I prefer not to. So with that said, I hope we have enough information to call the question on the motion as it stands.
Okay, so call the question on the deferral.
It's been seconded.
All those in favor? Opposed? Show that everyone is opposed. Jerry's opposed, or pardon me, Councillor Hong's opposed as well. Thank you. Now, we'll require another motion to...
There's already a motion now on the floor for reconsideration now that the deferral was defeated.
Right, for reconsideration of the original motion. Can we use the reconsideration to also include the suspension of our procedure bylaw? Okay, so that has to also be voted on. Okay, perfect. On the reconsideration motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so show that Councillors Bestwick, Yoakum, Pratt, Hong, Thorpe, Fuller, and Kipp are opposed. Yep, I had them. Great, thank you. Motion is defeated. Now, is there an appetite for a new motion to hear this again after suspending our bylaws, to hear it in a timely fashion in 2 weeks at our next meeting? Seeing none. Councillor Pratt.
I guess just listening to what Ms. Samra had to say, that I think the next step would be for the developers to go to staff and talk to them. And then if staff feels that there's a way to bring this back, that's fine. And if not, then I guess we wait.
So, Councillor Brennan.
I agree with Councillor Pratt insofar as I think that the next step would be for the developer to sit down with our staff. But if the fix is as simple as the developer believes, then I think that it would not be out of line to ask that it come back earlier than 3 months.
Would you prepare to make a motion to that effect?
No, I think that has to be, that has to arise out of the discussion between the developer and our staff. Staff may say, it's a really quick fix. You're right. Total misunderstanding here. We think this should go forward in a month. They may hold a different view, and then it wouldn't be appropriate to bring it forward in a month. But the ball, I guess, now is in the developer's court to meet with our staff and convince them of that there was an error made in the first place.
Thank you. That's it then. So, next item. Proposed strategies to support commercial vehicle training. To obtain council's direction to update the city's truck route network and issuing exemption permits for our commercial vehicle training schools. There is a presentation by Mr. Gordon Foy, the Manager of Transportation, and we also have a delegation. Mr. Foy.
I'd like to present this report on an issue that has been raised by some of the commercial vehicle training schools in Nanaimo. As of today, there's, or historically, there has been 3, sometimes 2 are operating VIU, Parkway Driving Academy, and sometimes the School of Motoring from Cowichan. The issue arises because the current truck route bylaw effectively requires that a truck starts from their origin, wherever they are in the city, drives to the nearest truck route directly, then travels along the truck route network, and then goes to their destination. And this works really well for normal truck operation because effectively it means you can access pretty much any origin and destination within the city, but it requires trucks to travel on the major roads, the truck route network, which is highlighted on the map above in blue and green. The issue that's arisen with the training schools is that they don't really have a destination when they're out training. What they're doing is they're looking for a variety of scenarios to work their students through within the street network, and so that they can gain experience of what they're going to encounter real life when they go out and drive their trucks. And so the challenge is they are actually completely restricted to the truck route network, and can't really depart from it, except for perhaps when they leave and begin and end their session at the school. So a while ago, the schools approached us. They highlighted this as an issue. We've been working with them to identify how to perhaps improve the situation for them. And contained in this report, there's 2 defined solutions. One is to potentially consider expanding the truck route network that's highlighted in pink on the map. They're relatively minor amendments in their areas that are on major roads and already service industrial and commercial areas. It's Boxwood Road through the Boxwood Industrial Park, Metro Drive right at the north end down to Enterprise Way is largely commercial, and Mary Ellen between Island Highway and Nanaimo Parkway, again commercial, and potentially in the future having a roundabout in that section. The second strategy was there was another 2 locations that the schools had identified that they would like to have access to, but were not necessarily commercial industrial in nature. They're still major roads. And we have included in this report proposal that we use something called a term exemption permit to allow them to have access to those areas just for the specific purpose of commercial vehicle training. And lastly is a housekeeping item that would be required to allow recommendation 2 to move forward. It would just be direction to staff to update the bylaw.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Councilor Bestwick.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Foy. I appreciate the information. In reading the report, the Boxwood I know it's just a little pink line, and it comes off Northfield?
Yeah, so it would start at Northfield and Boxwood, head down Boxwood to Dufferin, around the roundabout, and then back to Bowen.
So for me, that is a residential, half the street, if you will, and maybe both sides of the street is residential. And when we were putting in that gas lock environment there, it was, the increased traffic. It's become quite a shortcut route for a lot of people that don't go to Bowen. off Northfield and hang a right and go down south on Bowen. It's become quite a shortcut to Meredith and then in. So the traffic generation there has been considerable. And if these commercial trucks for training, if that's not a road that they're allowed to be on, then I don't know why we would train them to be on a road like that. If they need a parking lot to back up to, like they would have to if they were backing into crazy places and going through all those things, that's good training for me. But to increase an already busy and congested street that has a lot of people that walk it because of some of the activities that take place there on the west side of that road going down toward the industrial, I have a little bit of a challenge with that. While it seems very little and minor in comparison to the big green and blue lines, it does have, to me, a significant impact on the people that are in that area at Northfield and Boxwood, if you will. And to go around the roundabout, to come back out the other way, or the same way, to follow the roundabout and come back out up onto Northfield, I find that a little bit of a stretch for training. Just that's my opinion. Thank you.
I wonder if I could, Councillor Bestwick. Mr. Dutton is the owner of one of the driving schools, and I was fortunate enough to have gone out on about a 2-hour trip with him, and I think he'll be able to shed a lot of light on the concerns that you have. Mr. Dutton, if you could care to come down. Who's that?
My name is Phil Dutton, and I'm the owner of Parkway Driving Academy in Nanaimo. And my business is educating people on how to drive vehicles that are upwards of 8 feet long and weigh 62,500 kilograms. I service the food industry. I service the logging industry, the fishing, and the construction industry. We've never been in a big truck like these before to try and get into a residential area with a low bed to unload a machine for construction. It's a lot more than driving through pylons in a parking lot. Not only that, but with me educating these people, men and women, how to drive, they not only just drive in Nanaimo, but they have to drive in Vancouver, Abbotsford, Calgary, Edmonton, Seattle, Los Angeles. They go everywhere. And I need to be able to educate these people on how to manipulate a vehicle of that size around a roundabout, right-hand turns, and how to manipulate trucks in traffic. Considering we deal with a lot of people who text and drive and they're really not paying attention. And I have to give these people the best chance possible to be gainfully employed when they go out there to get a job. I educate the municipality drivers, the sanitation technicians, firemen of Nanaimo, firemen of all over BC, everybody. And I need to be able to give them the best possible chance. And I understand residential, but the moving trucks, they have to be able to get in to these areas safely and manipulate a truck of that size without running over curbs, sprinkler heads, stop signs, and things like that. So that's just my business, and that's what I need to do. And when I took Mayor McKay out, I have to do a few turns, which with a vehicle of my size, which is 70 feet long, I have to borrow 2 lanes. So, for instance, Hammond Bay and a right onto Uplands at the fire hall there. I have to borrow 2 lanes, meaning I have to manipulate the traffic that's coming behind me in order to make a turn. Now, if you remember a few years ago, there was a fuel spill on Uplands, and it's because the vehicle didn't come down and make a right onto Hammond Bay Road and a right onto Uplands and go up the hill, down the hill, and as they turned the corner, a little shifted to the side, and therefore it rolled over. I educate people on how to drive around the city safely. And with the bylaw, the way it's set out right now, I'm restricted to what I can do. And I need more to be able to have these people to drive around with a vehicle of such size.
Councillor Westwick.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming up and speaking. Please do not be offended by my comment of parking lots and pylons. But I know when I failed my motor scooter license, I wasn't on a road. I was in a parking lot going around pylons, and I failed it miserably. And when I did finally get it on the road, I went up onto a sidewalk and through a restaurant front window on a scooter. So I understand. I completely appreciate.
That was last week.
That wasn't that long ago. So I completely understand the requirement for safety and the need to be trained properly. So my concern is the same concern that you have for your drivers and those that they will be put out into the roads with, is the people that are already on the roads. So in that, there's that one stretch that just, half a mile, whatever, up the street and around the corner, there's a considerable amount of pedestrian traffic, considerable, and at all hours of the day and dark and everything else. So I know that you're training your guys to be cautious and careful. Is this the only option? I'm sorry, this isn't necessarily a question for you, but is this the only option that we have? This 1 mile stretch of road with a roundabout to present a teaching, learning opportunity?
So for this specific section, a couple things that we noted. One is that Boxwood Road is a major road, and so is Dufferin. It services an existing industrial area. It wasn't industrial that long ago. It's only since sort of around 2008, or maybe a little bit before that it's been developing. But 2008 was about when the connection for Boxwood got connected through. And, it's absolutely true. It has been changing. And it gives them access to a roundabout. The other roundabout we have in town is the one at Turner and Turner, and that one's right in a residential area. So, comparing the two, it seems like the impact would be much larger at the Turner and Turner location. Potentially in the future, maybe Marielle and Mall Access would potentially be another location, but as of right now, that doesn't exist.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
I'm just trying to get my bearings on this, and I do know there is some residential coming off of Northfield down until about where you hit the curve to go around and come into the industrial area.
So,
how many houses are there around there?
I'm not sure I could count the number of houses, but Councillor Bestwick is correct that from Northfield, as you head south, generally on the on the east side of the road is residential to about Meredith.
Okay.
And then the land use starts to change as you turn around the corner. On the other side is an institution for medical treatment that there's a fair number of people walking out of that institution, so that's also true. So, everything that we've discussed is true, is going out there, but it is an industrial area, and right now there's lots of trucks that are using that road because they are abiding by the bylaw and just accessing industrial sites in the area. The likely impact of vehicle training on that total number may not be that high. But changing it to a truck route would allow any commercial vehicle to use this route. So that's another important point to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Past the driving school issues, I appreciate the fact that traffic can cut through here. We've put the light up at the other end to allow access and egress. We should probably improve that stretch of Boxwood. I think a few years ago we asked about a sidewalk along there, about a $300,000 value. But this also frees up some traffic on Bowen Road to make that alternate. One of the worst things we've done is build cul-de-sacs, and they're hard to get in and out of or transfer through. So I believe this helps create a bit of a grid for our traffic and our truck traffic. So I'm in support of the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kipp. So, thank you very much, sir. Motion to receive the delegation. Moved and seconded. Councillor Pratt, seconded. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councillor Brennan.
I'm trying to find the motion here. I would move the staff recommendation, all three of them, rather than read them all out.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah. It makes sense to me that we do this. Ultimately, the aim for both of us is to make sure our roads are safe, make sure that our drivers are safe, and this goes a long ways towards doing that. I understand and I appreciate that the proponent is training truck drivers to be safe drivers, and that's a good thing for us. So I would like to be able to accommodate him and his students so that I can feel like when I'm on the road around trucks that they've been safely trained. So I'm for this.
Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kipp made me reconsider my consideration. Are the road, to Mr. Foy, are the roads that we are wishing to expand to built to the standards necessary for this increased traffic?
So Boxwood Road has been built to a number of standards, and particularly that section from Northfield to Meredith is really historic. I mean, it's not necessarily built to a particular standard. It sort of varies along the corridor. But once you hit Meredith, I think its road classification was industrial at the time that it was built. And then as we move further towards Dufferin, it is built to a full minor collector standard, which is a major road classification. My sort of thoughts are that as traffic volumes increase on the corridor, we're going to have to continue to improve that road to allow it to continue to operate safely. And so one of the first things we may consider stripping parking on one side at some point to accommodate enough lane widths. And eventually we will need to improve the section from Meredith to Northfield. But that's going to be sort of an incremental evolution as the road proceeds.
Thank you. Follow up. Thank you for that explanation. But this is where I would like that I could vote on something with conditions. But it's our conditions that we would improve that stretch from Meredith to Northfield for safety reasons that have already been identified to us for pedestrians. And because it is a neighborhood, and I think that would be an important, this has nothing to do with the delegation, it has nothing to do with the application, other than for me that I think if we're talking safety, then we need to talk about the whole package. And for that, for me, would include sidewalks. And I don't know where sidewalks fit into the equation in that stretch in the 5-year plan. But if you remind me at budget time in the fall, I would like to have that conversation. Could you please make that a placeholder? I think that's the proper word, a placeholder in the fall for sidewalk improvements in that area.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Yoakum.
Thank you. Just quickly in regards to this conversation is on Boxwood. I know this isn't a new concept to this concern, but again, I got to reiterate, Boxwood is a concern, the high usage of children. First of all, wherever we can train, the route's not my, I don't have an issue with the route, but somehow we need to come up with a speed bump or a roundabout at that Vibe Dance Studio because it's absolutely a nightmare when I go there every week. It's not just about me, but I witness it. Just sit in the car when my daughter's in her dance, and it is absolutely an insane amount of speeding that goes down the box right by Vibe Studio. So it is absolutely a liability. So I really hope someone takes this serious because a child is going to get bumped very soon, or a parent. It is not a good place. Thank you.
Thank you. The staff recommendation has been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, Cavendish Boulevard and Jingle Pot Road crosswalk. And the purpose is to obtain council's approval to conduct a budget transfer of capital funds to install pedestrian warning flashers on a crosswalk constructed by development. There is a recommendation on page 149.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Thorpe.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Pratt. Thank you. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. A question to Mr. Foy. Pedestrian caution flashers, they're only $7,500?
No, they're 15,000, but ICBC has agreed to contribute half. So basically, the developer of the 12-lot subdivision is contributing the letdowns and the concrete work, which left us with the flashers. And then we looked, well, every year we apply for our projects to see which ones might be available for their road improvement funding. And they looked at this project and they indicated that they could fund half of it. So at the end of the day, it works out to be roughly a third each party.
Thank you. So are these flashers similar to the ones on Front Street by Port Theatre?
They would be the side-mounted ones. So on each side of the road, flashing yellow when you hit the button. They're solar panel powered.
So the cars see the lights flashing?
Yes, absolutely.
But the walkers don't know when the lights are flashing?
No.
Is there a way that the people crossing the street could know that it's okay to go? Because I've found many people in that situation where they're not, the drivers can see it, but the pedestrians can't. That's question number one. Number two is, are we limited to how many requests to ICBC we can make for flashing things on an annual basis?
So maybe I'll answer them in sequence. So the first question, there's a rationale behind why we don't indicate to the pedestrian that they're flashing. So the important thing about pedestrian warning flashers to understand is that they don't actually stop the car. They're just making the car aware that you're in the crosswalk. And we don't want the pedestrian to believe that by hitting it, all of a sudden they have the absolute right of way. We want them to approach the crosswalk as you would any other crosswalk, look both ways, engage with the driver's eyes, and make sure that they're actually stopping before you go out.
Okay.
So that is one of the reasons at sort of a industry-wide sort of professional, like best practice, that you typically won't show someone that. It's a little bit different when you think about like a red, yellow, green type signal like China Steps, where you get an actual walk sign come up. And the reason is, in that case, you absolutely have the right of way. I mean, the other traffic has gone to red. They are required to stop, and then you have the right of way. And in that case, we provide positive guidance for you to cross. And it's a bit of a distinction, but it is really important for pedestrian safety. One of the things we worry about with these flashers is that people misuse them, and they just walk up them, hit them, and keep on walking. And you know that if you read what they say, it says, press for warning, but it doesn't say press and just walk out into the street. We want people to just still be cautious when they approach the streets.
Okay. My other question, are we limited to how many requests of ICBC we can make on an annual basis for flasher benefits?
So we actually typically will look at all of our projects and submit anything that has sort of an element of safety. So in general, I believe last year we got $125,000 back to them. I'm trying to remember if that included half of Halliburton and Victoria. We might have split some of that money with the province. But we will typically submit all of our road improvement projects, and in some cases they'll give us a fair bit of money back, in some cases not very much. But what they assess is, as an insurer, how much money do they think this project's going to save them. And in this case, they must have assessed that it was going to be quite a bit, because they're covering roughly half of the cost that we submitted.
Thanks.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, Community Heritage Register update. And the purpose is to present Council with an updated Community Heritage Register, including the removal of 2 buildings and a number of minor text and photo edits. Staff recommendations on page 151 that Council adopt the amended Community Heritage Register as shown in attachment A of the staff report. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Discussion. Councillor Kipp.
I just would like to thank staff member who has put this together and the work he's done for the couple of decades I've been around here. The work has been phenomenal. I appreciate the register is excellent, the housing and all of it, and the explanations is really good. I like our heritage registry. I believe it's got some provincial accolades over time too, and I just say great report. It's nice to protect our heritage in that type of construction. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to just make a comment about Mr. Schulberg and his knowledge, and that is contained within the report is the Gene Burns block. And when we were down there looking at that building, I didn't realize it was actually 2 buildings. And somebody told me recently it was 3 buildings.
That's correct, yeah.
3 buildings that started their life in about 1934, and the last building was built in 1957?
55.
55. And the fact that the original portion of the building is no longer on the registrar, and that the the portion that burned was actually the portion that is listed on the registrar.
That's correct.
On the register, pardon me. Fascinating, fascinating. Ms. Sammer.
Thanks. I actually asked Chris to stay and maybe spend a few minutes taking you through and explaining for those who may not have had the opportunity to look at it at home about his work and its importance to the community.
Thank you, Tracy.
I wonder, before you start, there's a house up on Prideaux Street that sits up on a knoll. Can you highlight that one? Built in the late 1800s?
Yeah, on 4th Street?
Prideaux.
Prideaux, oh.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, thank you. If you had an address, that could be easier. But,
thank you.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So just to say a few words as we have this opportunity about the city's Heritage Conservation Program, and it's something that I've administered since 1999. We've had a Heritage Register in place since 2002, and the thing about the Heritage Register, it's actually a foundational document for the program. It basically lays out those properties, whether they're buildings, structures, or sites that are considered to have historical value to the city of Nanaimo and the community at large. Currently, about 180 building sites and structures on the register. Also, we do administer incentive programs through the Heritage Conservation Program, such as the Heritage Facade Grant Program for commercial buildings downtown, and also we do actually have a Heritage Tax Exemption Program. We've done a few projects over the years, about 4 of them under that program for downtown property, commercial properties as well, and residential properties. And we do have a Heritage Home Grant Program that's the 3rd incentive program that we have. Small incentives, but they're basically intended for up to $2,500 grants for folks that are listed as residences, usually single-family residences on the Heritage Register. I don't know what else I could add beyond that as far as an outline of the current program, but it's been very effective. It's been part of downtown revitalization since the early 2000s, and it's a piece of the puzzle towards the revitalization of the downtown core.
Thank you. Excuse me. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to also congratulate and thank Mr. Schulberg for the work that he does in this area of the city. I know I've gone on at least a couple of heritage walks that Mr. Schulberg has led. I know Councillor Fuller has done that as well, and I'm sure others probably as well. But very interesting, and I would urge or encourage citizens that are watching or listening to consider watching for those in future and take advantage because they're extremely interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Thorpe.
Councillor Pratt.
I too would like to thank Mr. Schulberg. I've had the pleasure of sitting on the Culture and Heritage Committee and working with him. And I've just learned so much from Chris and so much from being on that committee in terms of this type of document that we have before us today that really brings together everything and shows us all the important pieces in Nanaimo in terms of our heritage. And I know we've lost a lot of buildings over the years to fire and so on, and in some cases they've been taken down, such as Harewood School very recently, or burned, like the Gene Burns building. So I just appreciate all the work that is done. I know the archives, the same type of thing. There's a lot of work being done there, and I know, Chris, that you're very involved in all of that and have a lot of knowledge around it. So thank you for coming here tonight and presenting us with this and updating it. And I went through it this afternoon, and because I was born and raised here, I certainly recognized almost all of those buildings.
Thank you, Councillor Pratt.
Councillor Bestwick.
Thanks. Good stuff, Chris. Appreciate it very much. A couple of questions.
Sure.
Do we derive any taxes from heritage properties?
Well, for the most part, we do. The only instance in which we wouldn't would be if we approved the tax exemption bylaw, which would be for a temporary period up to 10 years. And the intention there is when folks are doing major investments in those properties, we want to defer the revenue collection as a way of bonusing or allowing them to basically do that initial investment. And then what we find is at the end of the period of exemption, ideally the property assessment rates will be higher, the tax rates will be higher, and then we'll recoup that money over the next 10 or 20 years beyond. So that's the general theory.
Incentives to restore.
Exactly. But basically, most of the buildings on the Heritage Register, for example, would pay taxes, as any other property would. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am the last in the long line of people who want to say to you just how much I appreciate the work you do and how much I have appreciated over the past 5 years that we've worked quite closely together. Your quiet, sort of methodical manner is always appreciated. Your sense of humor helps us through sometimes when we're deciding on whether we should maintain the heritage status of this house, and just the sort of tender care that you've taken with some people who felt that they just couldn't let go of their home, and yet at the same time, or the heritage status of their home, and yet at the same time things were falling apart and it really wasn't hitting the mark. So I know many people admire you for the attention that you pay to the individuals that own these houses. And I admire you for that too. I think there was one more thing I wanted to say to you, just your leadership in the tax exemption, the Heritage Tax Exemption Program. You have done an excellent job of helping us and the downtown, in particular the downtown, make the upgrades that needed to be made. The Painted Turtle was the first one that I was aware of, and it made a huge difference to that part of downtown. That was a really exciting program. The church and the roof, where we kicked in heritage money on that, I think, and they leveraged more money in. So it's those kinds of, I think, that kind of thinking, elevated thinking, that helps us move along in our work towards maintaining and preserving our heritage. So thank you for the work you've done.
Thank you, Councillor Wren. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to say the address I was looking for was 546 Prideaux Street. It's the Harrison residence.
Yes, the Harrison. Yeah, the
big Harrison one on residence.
Yes.
What I find so interesting, whenever I talk to you or I talk to Christine from the archives, the stories that you hear, and if you've never read, if the public has never read this registry and the stories about these homes and these buildings, it's absolutely fascinating. So again, thank you very much. That's it. There's a motion on the floor. No, it's already been moved and seconded. All those, call a question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. You can take the rest of the night off. The next item is under bylaws with no accompanying report, and that is on page 219, there's a motion that the Housing Agreement Bylaw 2016 number 7226, which relates to RA 358, to authorize a housing agreement at 416 434 Wakesaya Avenue be adopted. Moved by Councillor Kipp, seconded by Councillor Thorpe. Discussion. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, under correspondence, which is not related to a report to council, and that is an email dated 2016, April 22nd, from it's Rupert and Franny Yakalashek regarding the City of Victoria's Federal Bill of Environmental Rights Resolution. And we need a motion to receive the correspondence. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Bestwick. Discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising?
Yes.
Councillor Brennan.
I think that Rupert and Franny would be interested in knowing the City of Nanaimo's response to the Environmental Bill of Rights. We did some really thorough work on it last year. We developed our own, which kind of follows the template that we have been given, but it's tailored to us here in Nanaimo. So I would move that Rupert and Franny be sent a copy of our environmental rights. Yeah, the document that we developed here, but I'm very proud of it.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kipp. Councillor Bestwick.
Oh, no,
Okay.
Sorry, next. Sorry.
Thank you. See no questions, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Councillor Bestwick.
Thanks. I don't know if this is a place, but at the front of the agenda, we had the Fiddle group come seeking for us to have 1 week of Fiddle Week, National whatever, Nanaimo Fiddle. Do we do that now, or it's already been done? Has that been done?
Yes, it's already been done, and the proclamation is on our website.
Oh,
We
I'm
do it
sorry.
that way now, and
Oh, I didn't know. When did we do that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we get asked to do those things. Sorry.
It used to be, and now it's done automatically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much for everyone. Great. Thank you. Now, there is another order of business, and that is Councillor Hong under other business.
Thank you, Worship. I wanted actually a staff report, an oral staff report on the status of getting the sidewalks painted for the Pride Parade and for the Nanaimo Pride Society.
You're asking for a report, Councillor Hong?
Yeah, an oral staff report. I think we had an email earlier today from the staff that they can present us an oral report on the options. I think we have those options, and I was going to make the motion to proceed with one of the options that the staff had presented.
Okay, so then if you don't mind bearing with us for the sake of the public and those in the gallery, I wonder if we could ask Mr. Foy to brief us orally on that initiative.
All right, thank you. So this is, this is just follow-up from last week's presentation, and Council indicated a desire to perhaps have some options to move forward. And considering that the event is on June 12th, time is of the essence. So we were hoping to just bring you a verbal update on the work that the progress we've made so far on this issue. So the request was basically to do a rainbow. I don't have a slide or any image of it, but a rainbow crosswalk at the intersection of Commercial and Bastion, and to have that in place for June 12th, which is the 2016 Nanaimo Pride Parade date. So staff have looked at the situation out there, and there's a couple of challenges. One is, as you may know, many of our crosswalks in the downtown core are brick, and that brick is not necessarily brand new. So in many cases, it's a little bit loose, or there's some movement when vehicles go over it. And because of that, we were looking at sort of more of a temporary solution out there. Our approach has been to look at standard road paint and to use that to paint the rainbow on the crosswalks in a similar pattern that you've seen in Vancouver and in Victoria, but with the caveat that as road paint in an intersection, it's going to wear. Typically, we get about a year's worth of time out of typical road paint, but the challenge is the color changes pretty fast. You notice that vibrant yellow in the center line right away, and then it fades a little bit. And we're going to have some wear patterns where vehicles are turning at the intersection. but it's something that we can deliver quite quickly, and the cost is relatively small.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brennan.
Can you refresh my memory, Mr. Foy? Is every crosswalk along Commercial, is everyone the brick? Because I'm specifically thinking of the ones, say, by Diana Krall Square, and there's another one in front of the museum. I'm just wondering if...
So I hunted around to see if I could find some that weren't brick. Diana Krall isn't brick, but Museum Way is not. I think it was perhaps developed as part of the conference center, so it's relatively newer and it's not brick. The other crosswalk I looked at was out at Skinner Street and Fitzwilliam, only because there was a little bit of discussion at the meeting last week about potentially changing routes. But for now, the route is still on Commercial, as far as I understand. So the only one that I found along there that isn't in brick was that crosswalk right in front of Serious Coffee.
So would then the cost of doing that with the better paint work? Or perhaps not the cost so much as... I know that Rick Myers was talking about it being 4 crosswalks all in one place, but I'm just wondering about that crosswalk. It's quite central, and whether you could use the better wearing paint.
Yeah, so when we looked at the paint that we were thinking about for Commercial and Bastion is about $2,500. And that number is based on a conversation with one of the local contractors this afternoon. So I can't really commit to that. It's just sort of our best estimate at this time. When we looked at the Museum Way one, and we did look at it, our approach would be generally to grind off the top layer of asphalt, a thin layer, give ourselves a working coat to work with, and then put down this MMA material, which is the same material we've seen other cities use. Our expectation is that would last a long time. It would basically be a permanent installation versus the other one being temporary. But in that case, you might be looking at more like $12,000 to $15,000. And again, because I'm doing this we're just trying to pull this together for you at the end of last week, those numbers are also relatively uncertain. If you want to know what MMA looks like, it's the same green material we used on the hazard marking for the bike lane on Bowen. So in that case, it's on a very busy road, and it's been standing up just fine. So it's quite a difference. One's temporary, one's permanent.
Okay, can I just follow this up?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, so the report, the way I read it, and it says the cost of installing rainbow on the 2 legs of Commercial Street is expected to be $7,000 to $8,000, and that, I believe, was the better paint. The cost of using the less good paint is $2,500. So I'm not sure where the $15,000 comes, how you're...
Okay, so we believe that $8,000 is just for 2 crosswalks at the intersection of Bastion and Commercial, basically crossing Commercial side. And it would be just applied directly onto the brick subsurface. Our primary concern is the bricks themselves are moving a bit, and the paint's not designed to hold bricks together, so we're worried it'll just sort of crack along the brick lines and perhaps degrade quite quickly. The difference, where the difference in money comes from over at Museum Way is that we would grind out a thin layer of asphalt that might cost $2,000 to $4,000, depending on how complex it is. And then on top of that, we would add the $8,000 for the MMA, and that gets us to $12,000. Like I said, until we really get a contractor involved and ask them a price, it's not something that we've done. It's not something that's done commonly. So that's why there's so much uncertainty at this point.
So, though, we think that we think that it would last longer, look better, and not fade so much. Can we say that? All parts. Oh, for the one in front of Serious Coffee.
Yes.
Because I'll tell you what I'm concerned about is that doing it up on the corner of Bastion and Commercial, we slap it down over the bricks. Number one, it starts fading, and and then the colors start to change. They're not so vibrant. So I would maybe prefer to pay a little more respect to the idea of it by using the one in front of Serious Coffee and doing it right so it lasts longer and the vibrancy stays. If I was to be making the decision all by myself, I would make that my decision.
Thank you. Ms. Hammer.
Okay, certainly. I guess we've had a week to take a look at this, and the representatives from the organization had said they wanted to put together their inaugural Pride Parade, and one of the ideas that they'd like to do is to paint crosswalks, and they identified the crosswalks that they wanted to paint. We were quite surprised to hear the costs of doing it on a permanent nature, 15, 25,000 plus in the other communities. So staff looked at other options that were more cost effective, not knowing if the Pride Parade will be done a second year and a third year, and also given the fact that Council has identified public art in crosswalks as one of the projects it may want to pursue across the city. So that's why we came back with a recommendation of using the cheaper or more cost-effective paints over the bricks, because even if you use the expensive ones there, the wear and tear is 1 or 2 years. Certainly if council wants to permanently put in that crosswalk, those costs will be higher. I'm not sure how quickly we can mobilize contractors to do the permanent the steps to have it on a more permanent basis. We were hoping in the most respectful way possible that getting this information to you and putting the city in a position to at least do 1 or 2 crosswalks in a cost-effective manner would be honoring what you've asked us to do and respecting and honoring that request as a commitment towards Pride Parade. So we've given you the range. Our recommendation is the more cost-effective over the short term until council has decided where it's going to be putting its public art and how it wants to deal with permanently designating crosswalks for different types of purposes. So we really haven't put a report together for you and had that conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
I appreciate that information from staff, and I tend to agree with it. Not that I want to shortchange the Gay Pride Parade, because I don't. I think it's a great idea. I think it shows some respect for people. And I like the idea that we take some time to decide if we're going to do something more permanent. I really like the idea of doing some crosswalks in different motifs, so this would be one of them, but I think we can delay that at least a year. That way we could put it in the budget too. I mean, it wouldn't be something that we just all of a sudden come up with this great idea and we're going to spend between 15 and 25,000. That just seems crazy without really thinking it through as to where we want that permanent one to be. So I would prefer that we just do the short-term measure to begin with. It gives us a chance to look at it too and see what that looks like. So that's what I would prefer to do.
Thank you. I wonder if
I'd like to make a motion.
You'd like to make a motion?
Yes, I would.
Go ahead, Councillor Hong.
I would like to make a motion that we direct staff to paint the 2 upper Commercial Street crosswalks in Pride colors as a temporary basis.
Great. It's moved by Councillor Hong and seconded by Councillor Kipp. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Councillor Hong. And that's that. No more other business. And so now for question period.
Good evening, Council. My name's Tim McGrath, 431 3rd. I got a message as the meeting was progressing on my phone that the sign man wants to say thank you for removing your sign.
Thank you, sir.
Robert Fuller, 3350 Hammond Bay Road. Seems to me, these questions, I've got a series of questions. And with the, on 5B, that was the information that was put forth earlier by Ms. Samra. It seems to me that an olive branch was extended by Ms. Samra. Not too bizarre, if I do say so myself. And I have a couple of questions here. Have these actions described by Ms. Samra, by Mr. McKay, and Councillor Brennan to a lesser degree, continued since the hiring of Ms. Samra by way of Council Will?
I'm not prepared to answer any of those questions with respect to 5B, sir.
Why not?
No comment, sir.
So I'm a citizen and I can't ask a question, you won't respond to me.
No, sir.
Go figure. 2, are you willing to cease and desist in your actions insofar as to your endeavors in the dismissal of Ms. Samra and apologize not only to herself, but council and the citizens of Nanaimo?
No comment, sir.
Go figure. And 3, are you prepared to resign at this point?
No, sir.
Figured you might not answer that as well. Thank you.
Yep. Any others? Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Nope. Ma'am, do you wish to speak? Please.
Okay. Kathy Nichols, 3836 Jinglepot, 3713 Cavendish, 2387 Brackenwood. I have a few houses and trying to unload. You supported something tonight, and I just wanted to say thank you for my variance for a heat pump.
Thank you.
Is that all right? Am
Yep.
I allowed to talk? I've never done this, so I'm just...
This is actually question period, ma'am.
Question period.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question, thank you, on heat pump locations, you have a bylaw. I'm getting nervous here, I'm sorry.
No.
It doesn't seem to address when you build a carriage house. So I built a house and a carriage house, and it got put in between, unknowingly. I didn't know there was a bylaw. You trust the builder or whoever's doing it to put it in the right spot. It wasn't put in the right spot.
Keep going. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
So what my question is that bylaw, it doesn't seem to make sense if you've got a carriage house. The city staff sent letters to my neighbors, myself being one of them, because I still have the house on the corner. Also sent to my tenant in the carriage house, or will be in the carriage house when I get my occupancy. And beyond that, my next neighbor was 50 feet that way. I'm still in this house, and I had to pay $500 to get you to amend something for a heat pump that was put 3 feet away from where it should have been under your bylaw. The bylaw, to me, doesn't make sense, so I just wanted to know if there's a way or an avenue that it can be looked at when you're in a carriage house situation? Like you're saying, you can't put it in between or next to your neighbor's, what do you call them?
Side yard? Side yard?
Yeah, the side yards, but I was, okay. Setbacks or whatever. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I've never
So I
done
got a
this.
couple of
I'm
questions,
just-
or one question for you. When you were the recipient of one of the notice concerning the application, did you write a nasty letter back?
Not at all.
Thank you. I wonder if you can capture your sentiments on this experience and recommendations that you would make as somebody who's gone through this process to mayor and council, and we'll see that it gets on to senior staff so that we can address those concerns and how we might do that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. All those seconded by Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.